Coming to you live from deep beyond the veil. I'm Chris Gio. I'll be your host this evening, joined, of course, by my lovely wife, co-pilot, twin, and commander of all.
Good evening, everyone.
Mrs. Gio. And tonight, we have some awesome information to go over with you guys. We have a really good article, and it's a long one, too, that really goes in depth about the myth of Sophia and... What was that?
A drink.
Ah.
It's organic root beer.
Organic root. The chipmunk is back, ladies and gentlemen.
It's just organic root beer.
She was sneaking it too. She did it underneath, so I can't see. But we have an awesome article about the myth of Sophia, and it really gets into depth about the creation of the Demiurge, the creation of the artificial intelligence, and it's something that I really have not been able to articulate as well as this article. So, what is this article, like 5, 6, 7 pages?
Oh,
Something like that?
I would say at least 7 pages.
Yeah,
to 10 pages.
It's huge. So it's going to take up probably the first hour, if not the first hour and the second hour of the broadcast. So what I've always found interesting is that the Ayahuasca Dmt Revelations seem to reveal a lot of information that is contained in ancient writings and books. And, you know, it's very difficult to explain it to everybody because when you see it, it's a lot different than when you're trying to articulate it. There's some things that you can see that are just indescribable. I mean, we come back and we try to explain to each other what we've seen, and even to each other who've both been in the realm before, it's a little difficult to articulate. But what never ceases to amaze me is the fact that visions and gnosis are given and then found in books later. So the myth of Sophia, for example, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, all of these things I had visions of prior to actually reading the information. And I do want to do a show where we go over the Emerald Tablets of Thoth with everybody, because there's some very, very important information about the origin of all of this. And essentially, the humans got a hold of one of Thoth's machines and they tried to use it as a weapon. When they tried to do that, they wound up ripping a hole inside of the construct and allowing the lower dimensional entities to escape into this higher dimension. I talked about this hole in our construct a few years ago, but I didn't have the context of the Emerald Tablets to fully understand what I was looking at. All I saw was this hole with this eye looking into it, and it was like a pyramid in an eye. And the hole was kind of in the shape of a triangle, not a pyramid. That's not the right word, but it was in the shape of the triangle, which is the motif of the all-seeing eye that you see on the back of the dollar bill. Now, most people would turn to that iconography and say, hey, that's Illuminati symbolism. But you have to understand the origins of that symbol as well. And when you understand the real origins, not the conspiracy theory origins, you realize that up is down, left is right, and it's completely backwards. This was the eye of Yahweh, and it's always been the eye of Yahweh. I don't know how it turned into the eye of Lucifer. I don't know how it got twisted around like that, completely upside down. Perhaps it's because this being, who I refer to as Yahweh, I feel that that's the closest name, but this article here actually gives another name. What was the name? Yadaboa, something like that?
Yaldabaoth.
Yaldabaoth. Okay. But, you know, the way that the two characters get tied in together, this Satan character, and I don't want to use the word Lucifer, because Lucifer and Satan connection is a complete and total misnomer and complete misinformation. It actually came from a book called Paradise Lost that was a work of fiction. It was just a poem that was supposed to be a work of fiction about the fall of Lucifer and hell and things like that. But somehow it got tied into actual religious dogma and taken as scriptural, quote unquote, fact. but in actuality, there are no connections to Lucifer and Satan. At least not like Lucifer being an evil character. When you go back in history, you realize that there were a lot of different cultures that revered a being or energy or teacher or even a planet. And they called it Lucifer, and the ones that revered it as a planet were revering Venus, the morning star. And you realize that it was tied into the Christian dogma around 300 AD, 300 CE. I guess they changed it from AD to CE. CE is now Common Era, and I kind of like CE better because it just kind of gives a less religious connotation to the idea. But around 325 CE, as I've said before, the Council of Nicaea was commissioned by Constantine to create a state religion called Christianity. They took the Lucifer idea to try to demonize some of the other quote-unquote pagan belief systems, and they started to evolve Lucifer into the Satan figure. And the Lucifer-Satan connection really didn't become completely fixed together until later, like hundreds of years later, like in the 1600s, 1700s. And as time progressed, you repeat something enough and people start taking it as true that Satan and Lucifer have this connection. But all in all, I think what we're looking at here ultimately is the left and the right hand of the same beast. You have this beast that wants to proclaim that it's God, proclaim that it's the creator of everything, but in actual fact, it commits some horrible and evil acts because it's a very deeply seated egoic energy, as we'll go over here in just a few moments. And because of that, it can't say that it's this God of love and at the same time do all these horrible acts. So it created this two personalities, this two
duality of itself.
Duality of itself. So you can ascribe the evil acts to this Satan character while ascribing the good acts to this quote unquote Yahweh character, this God character. And it's a complete mixing of everything. And it's important to note too that the word paganism is actually a derogatory term made up by the church to describe any religion that is non-Christian. This includes Hinduism would be considered a pagan religion. Buddhism would be considered a pagan religion. Wicca, a pagan religion. And all of these religions are actually not evil at all. I mean, you know, a lot of people are trying to merge now some of the Christian teachings and some of the Buddhist teachings together. You have a lot of Christians doing yoga, for example, which is a Hindu tradition. And some of the church now is saying that, who's that guy, that old guy that always says all kinds of crazy stuff. Pat Robertson. Yeah. He's saying that yoga opens you up to demons and all kinds of ridiculousness like that. But you see the merger of these traditions again because people are realizing that they want more out of spirituality and they're turning to non-conventional methods, at least non-conventional in the sense of their own belief system, their own BS, because they feel a lack of connection with the mainstream religions, especially the Judaic Christian religions. But by the very definition of the word pagan and paganism, Judaism would be considered pagan as well because it is a non-Christian religion. So would Islam. Islam would also be considered a pagan religion.
I would go even so far to say that most Catholics back in the like Middle Ages believed that anybody that didn't believe in Catholicism itself was pagan. So if you were a Protestant, you were a pagan because you weren't following the strict Catholicism. So, I mean, even parts of their own self, they deny.
That's a good point. And a lot of people try to make a distinction between Catholic and Christian. But when you really think about it, the only main difference is that the Catholic book, I think it has like 88 books and the regular, it has 72 books. Yeah. The Catholic version
Bible has 66.
Yeah. The Catholic version has 72 books. The regular Bible has 66. Some of the books were taken out. Some of the books are very interesting, the ones that were removed. But then again, you go beyond the veil and you realize that there were literally dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of gospels that were excluded by the Council of Nicaea, whose purpose was to create a particular type of belief system to rule the people of the Roman Empire with. And so
it had to be a belief system that they could control 100%.
Right. And there was a lot of the male-female aspect of this playing into this, like removing the feminine, removing Mary Magdalene, turning her into a whore, removing all references to women in a positive light. If you go through the Bible, it's always, women are always the root of all evil.
Except for Mary.
Yeah. And, the Catholics still hold on to a little bit of the feminine and the feminine masculine energy balance. So really, when you really think about it, from a Gnostic perspective anyways, the Catholics have it at least a little more right than mainstream Christianity does. But they have it completely and totally wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they have it right, but in comparison, it seems like the Catholics are kind of more in line with the teachings of Jesus, except for they completely veer off because Jesus, at least in the Gnostic understanding, was against the Pharisees, who the Catholics have become the Pharisees of this modern age. They, wear these fancy robes and think that they're different. And, it's just...
Well, they're the Pharisees of Christianity.
Yeah, exactly. And Jesus came back and he told the Pharisees, your father is the devil. You are of your father, the devil.
And the desires of your father you want to do.
Right. And I think those words were more than just metaphor. I think he was literally saying, your father, Yahweh, is the devil.
It's amazing. So we're going to go over this right on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
Right. Yaraboa coming up in just a moment.
Welcome back, traveler. Take a deep breath and relax as we continue to journey deeper beyond the veil.
My twin managed to make a cup of coffee for me in the last 30 seconds before. Like literally, the machine just stopped. So thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome.
The Gnostic god, Yaldabaoth. And it's an article it was written by a guy named Mo. GnosticWarrior.com is the website. And as Cherie was reading this to me, I said, wow, this is really well written. So I wanted to give proper credit to this guy, founder at the Order of the Gnostics. Welcome to the Order of the Gnostics on GnosticWarrior.com. My name is Mo, and I'm the founder. Our worldwide order is dedicated to pursuit of knowledge, truth, and real Gnosticism, using both ancient and modern Gnosis techniques, such as science, to not only know thyself, but also to master thyself. Find your path and join the Order of the Gnostics today. And there's a couple of links here. But I don't like Order of the Gnostics though. That name kind of like doesn't resonate well. Mm-hmm. I don't like Order of anything.
Yeah.
I like hashtag become your own shaman.
Right.
Because that puts the tools in your hands, that makes you the leader of your own movement. It makes you the leader of your own consciousness movement. And the consciousness movement is the next step, the evolution of the truth movement, in my opinion. And I feel that we're spearheading that, but we definitely want to put the message out there that the consciousness movement is individual. It's not a collective. It's a consciousness movement, and you're the one with the consciousness. It's your consciousness that is elevating. It's your consciousness that is the movement, and therefore, hashtag become your own shaman. But there's some great wisdom here. So take us away, Mrs. Gio.
Let's get started. It says, For Yaldabaoth said, I am God, and there is no other God beside me. According to the ancient Gnostic texts, there is a creator god named Yaldabaoth, Ildabaoth, or Yaldabaoth, who is described as a child of chaos and was the son of Sophia, wisdom, in Gnostic cosmogenesis. Yaldabaoth is called an angel in the apocryphal Gospel of Judas. He is first mentioned in the cosmos, chaos, and the underworld as one of the 12 angels to come into being to rule over chaos and the underworld. In the Gospel of Nicodemus, Yaldabaoth is called Satan, and Dante called the devil simply a worm. The Theosophists say that Yaldabaoth is identical with the Fetahil of the Codex Nazareus, the Demiurge of the Valentinian system, and the Pro-Archos of the Barbalite from Irenaeus 1:29-4, the Great Archon of Basilides, and the Elohim of Justinus. Yaldabaoth is the creator of the visible realm, or what we can call the Matrix society, and prince of the creative forces in humans, which he is the father of, the modern man in the form of earthly Adam and Eve in the biblical Garden of Eden. Diodorus Siculus had said that among the Jews, Phoenicians, and Greek Hellenes, they relate that Moses called the god Io, Aya, and Yah of the Hebrews. Yaldabaoth is the fiery serpent worm of Moses, who becomes the idol brass serpent spoken about in the scriptures under Numbers 21:8, where it is written, So the people came to Moses and said, We have sinned because we have spoken against the Lord and you. Intercede with the Lord that he may remove the serpents from us. And Moses interceded for the people. Then the Lord said to Moses, Make a fiery serpent and set it on a standard, and it shall come about that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, he will live. And Moses made a bronze serpent and set it on the standard. And it came about that if a serpent bit any man, when he looked to the bronze serpent, he lived. Therefore, when we see the symbols and references to the fiery serpent, commonly known as Yaldabaoth, all over the world, we can safely attribute this symbology to the original Israelites, who I believe can be directly connected to the Phoenicians, Cretans, Minoans, Ionians, Atlanteans, etc. The serpent worm was the standard or house insignia of their race, and it later became the phoenix, the harp, and the lion of the tribe of Judah. The very people who have brought the serpent and their religion to almost every land in the world, which they have left scientific evidence of their symbols, languages, and DNA in the same exact places, not to mention their book known as the Bible, which is the best-selling book of all time. This god Io of the Israelites can be easily found later in Greek mythology under the name of Iacchos, more commonly known today as Bacchus of the secret mysteries, the god from whom the liberation of souls was expected, Dionysus, Iacchos, Ioa, and Ea. Now, that's one thing I don't quite agree with. I'm just going to put a little bit of commentary in there. I don't believe that Bacchus and this Yaldabaoth character are related. In Pistis Sophia, Yaldabaoth is spoken of as residing in the great chaos, which is the outer mist, where with his 49 daemons he tortures wicked souls, page 382. It is from the serpent worm Yaldabaoth or Ildabaoth that humans are bestowed with the sacred knowledge of God as creators and their destroyers, for those who transgress the universal wisdom of natural laws of God will be punished by the demon parasites of Yaldabaoth. He is the ruler.
Well, the demon parasites is exactly what I've talked about on youtube.com/Beyond The Veil.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen these astral parasites, and I've been shown how to clear these parasites from people. The video is called How to Exorcise Demons. So if you want to check that out sometime, do so.
Well, and what's interesting about that is it's saying that if you abuse your power as a creator and destroyer, then you open yourself up to being fed upon by these parasites.
Interesting.
And that's exactly what you were talking about. Whenever you do drugs or alcohol, when you open yourself up to attack, then that can happen. Anyway,
interesting.
He is the ruler of this world, who is the chief archon, who is the son of the creator god of Genesis and the demiurge of Platonism. The meaning of the name demiurge is maker, which makes him the creator of the material world. This fact is key in understanding the meaning and role of Yaldabaoth over the material world or the Gnostic matrix. In the Gnostic Nag Hammadi library, under the Apocryphon of John, the Secret Book of John, the Secret Revelation of John, it states that Yaldabaoth is the chief archon created by the goddess Sophia in the, quote, form of a lion-faced serpent with its eyes were like lightning fires with which flash.
And we constantly see lion symbolism, the Lion of Judah, etc., in the mainstream Bible. So tying it in to a lion-faced serpent, it paints a whole new picture, in my opinion.
And it even has a picture of this lion-faced serpent. And it's creepy. It's creepy. It looks like an evil figure. But anyway, she cast it away from her. This is talking about Sophia. She cast it away from her outside that place, that no one of the immortal ones might see it, for she had created it in ignorance. And she surrounded it with a luminous cloud, and she placed a throne in the middle of the cloud that no one might see it except the Holy Spirit, who is called the Mother of the Living. And she called his name Yaldabaoth.
Now, this is the typical iconography that you see of the bearded man in the clouds. I mean, it all comes from this Gnostic writing right here, plain as day.
Definitely. This is the first archon who took a great power from his mother. It doesn't say that he created himself like mainstream religion has us believe. It doesn't say that he just came into being and that he created everything out of nowhere. No, he took a great power from his mother, and he removed himself from her and moved away from the places in which he was born. He became strong and created for himself other eons with a flame of luminous fire which still exists now. And he joined with his arrogance, which is in him, and begot authorities for himself. In other words, he positioned himself to be all powerful, and he's kind of like one of those bad guys in one of the Marvel movies that is so pathetic and so arrogant that he has to create other bad guys to prop himself up and tell him how cool he is. The important thing to remember, moving on, the important thing to remember with the story of Yaldabaoth is that he and she, is an artificially created life form said to be a lion-faced serpent with its eyes were like lightning fires which flash, that was on a throne surrounded by a blood, and no one of the immortal ones could, I don't know what that means, and no one of the immortal ones could see it. He becomes the archon, arc-on, or spark-on of the human race. The word archon is composed of the words arc and on. Arc meaning a conduit of energy, that is the human sacred ark, or ark of the testimony, represents the original spark of divinity and knowledge that gave us Sophia or wisdom. Yaldabaoth would be akin to an arc welder, that is the power supply to create an electric arc between an electrode and the base material to melt metals. In humans, this would be the chemical energy we call phosphorus, that is the arc welder that creates an electric arc between an electrode being that of man and the Father, with the hopes of alchemically creating gold humans, enlightened spiritual humans out of lead humans, unenlightened non-spiritual humans. Yaldabaoth and his creations are referred to as the Serpent, which I've discussed before, was once written as worm, before the Latin church doctors had doctored the original Greek text that simply read worm.
Let me jump in for just a moment. Worm. I have a comment to make on that too. But I would disagree of the origin of the word archon.
Yeah, me too.
Perhaps there might be a semblance of truth to it, but to my understanding, arch is a Greek word, and it means like a ruler or a king or something like that. And that's why you have like archbishop or archbishop or archangel, etc., etc. It's a controller. It's somebody of
authority,
a quote unquote authority. Yeah, and that's where you get the word anarchy from as well, without rulers. A lot of people think that anarchy is people throwing Molotov cocktails, but in actual fact, it means living without rulers, living without the archons. So I'm very skeptical about the archons completely.
Yeah, me too, definitely. And I think it's interesting that the original Greek text simply read worm. Therefore,
Oh, let me
Yeah.
interject in this. Well, I talked about one experience where I saw these worms, and as a matter of fact, in the Ayahuasca guide, if you want to email us, you can email chrisgeo at tfrlive.com to get the Ayahuasca guide. But it's our recipe for making ayahuasca, and I talk about the worm entities in that particular guide. So there it is documented. But these worms appeared to me one time, and they were like, "Hey, take us back with you, and we'll give you special powers. We'll give you superpowers. We'll give you this. We'll give you that."
let us in.
Yeah, and they were lower dimensional entities. But it's funny that the word worm comes up because I have seen these astral worms before.
Therefore, we know Yaldabaoth is a type of human parasite or worm who seeks to rule and or be the chief archon over humankind, which is further discussed in the Apocryphon of John, where he is called ignorant darkness. That says it all to me. That's exactly how I've perceived this character for the longest time, is ignorant darkness. And when the light had mixed with the darkness, it caused the darkness to shine. And when the darkness had mixed with the light, it darkened the light, and it became neither light nor dark, but it became dim. Now the archon who is weak has 3 names. The first name is Yaldabaoth, the second is Saklas, and the third is Semael. And he is impious in his arrogance, which is in him. For he said, I am God, and there is no other God beside me. For he is ignorant of his strength, the place from which he had come. In other words, he was ignorant that he came from his mother. He was ignorant that all the power that he carried came from his mother,
Right.
Sophia.
He thought that he created himself and everything around.
Right, exactly. And the archons created 7 powers for themselves, and the powers created for themselves 6 angels for each one until they became 365 angels. And these are the bodies belonging with the names. The first is Athoth, and he has a sheep's face. The second is Eloeu, he has a donkey's face. The third is Astaphaeos, he has a hyena's face. The fourth is Yeo, he has a serpent's face with 7 heads. The fifth is Sabaoth, who has a dragon's face. The sixth is Adonin, he had a monkey's face. The seventh is Sabidi, he has a shining fire face. This is the 7ness of the weak. But Yaldabaoth had a multitude of faces, more than all of them, so that he could put a face before all of them, according to his desire, when he is in the midst of seraphs. He shared his fire with them, therefore he became Lord over them. Because of the power of the glory he possessed of his mother's light, he called himself God. And he did not obey the place from which he came. And he united the 7 powers in his thought with the authorities which were with him. For Yaldabaoth said, I am God, and there is no other God beside me.
And what's the first commandment?
Mm-hmm.
There are no other gods besides me.
You shall have no other gods before me.
Right.
This passage is important to understand because we can relate it to the fall of man or the fallen angels, in which we people living today are the descendants of fallen angels created by and ruled over by the chief archon and god of the material world, Yaldabaoth, the king of the demonic serpentary. Worms and or parasites, archons, control the central nervous system of humans and thus desire, who reside in humans were the creations of Yaldabaoth. Archons such as Yeo, who has a serpent's face with 7 heads, and the 5th archon is Sebaoth, and he has a dragon's face. Church Father and Bishop of Salamis, Cyprus, Saint Epiphanius in Adversus Heresies had written, The Ophites reputedly said, We venerate the serpent because God has made it the cause of Gnosis for mankind. Yaldabaoth, the Demiurge who was the god of the Jews, did not want men to have any recollection of the mother or of the Father on high. It was the serpent who by tempting them brought them Gnosis, who taught the man and the woman the complete knowledge of the mysteries from on high. That is why its father, Yaldabaoth, mad with fury, cast it down from the heavens. Cast down for his pride like the Christian rebel angel Lucifer, who is the same as Yaldabaoth, being the divine spark in humans, and the chief source of their intelligence as a product of the Demiurge, the Demiurge literally means half-working or half-powered. Yaldabaoth is who we can call the extraterrestrial leader of the archon race of the sons of the serpent, worm, from the true sovereign God of the Most High and soul of the world, who is Jupiter.
Let me jump in for just a moment. One thing that I would disagree with is the interconnection between serpent and worm. To my understanding, in my particular gnosis, it's two separate energies. Serpents are not the same as the worms. So we hear son of serpents, et cetera, but I would replace that with worm anytime that comes up.
Yeah,
but,
me too.
you know, ultimately you take it for how it resonates with you.
Right, exactly. That's a good point. The Ophites taught the Holy Hebdomad, whose chief was Yaldabaoth, Chaoson, or Chosen One, and is the god of the Jews. Yaldabaoth was commanded by his father Yahweh, Jehovah, or Jupiter, to create the earth and man. Some texts make him do this alone, others assign him demons as his helpers, especially the seven spirits or seven chemical energies and their elementals, worms or parasites of the planets. It is said in the Ophite text that Yaldabaoth created heavens and earth and is the ruler of the seventh heaven.
Let me interject one more time. I would also disagree with the fact or the idea that Yaldabaoth and Yahweh are two separate entities. I would say that they're one and the same.
Yeah, I think they're one and the same. And you know, there's always the idea that Terence McKenna and people like him brought up that maybe Jesus was Yahweh who coaxed himself into material being in order to do all of that. But anyway.
I have my thoughts on that. I don't know. Do you want me to give my opinion on what happened there?
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, this is the gnosis that I've received, but it seems that there was a change in the ministry of Jesus, even in the Gnostic perspective as well, because you had this first half of his life, which seemed to be very Essene based. He was surrounded by Marys. As we said before, Mary is a title. It's not the name. That's why you have Mary of Clopas, Mary of Rome, Mary Magdalene, Mary the wife of Jesus, Mary the mother of Jesus, and so on and so forth. You have all these different Marys. John the Baptist was Essene, etc., etc. I think that what happened is that Jesus was taken up to the mountain and shown the entire world. And he was told, you can have all of this. You'll judge the living and the dead. You'll give life and you'll take life. And I think Eugene knows what I'm quoting right there.
And that was Yaldabaoth?
And well, hold on. And he was tempted by all of this. And he gave into it instead of rejecting it. And he merged at that point with the Yahweh virus, and that's why Jesus is the ruler of the earth, etc., etc. So he essentially sold out humanity and sold out every bit of consciousness in the process. I've never said that out loud before. It's a gnosis that I've had for several years. I know it's going to piss a lot of people off, but this is what I have come to understand with the information that I have now. Go ahead.
You know, I'm not sure, but that's an interesting perspective. I need to take that into the realm and kind of ask about that.
That's why I don't resonate with Jesus very much. I resonate with a lot of his early work, but, you know, the Black Album from that point on, I don't really resonate with.
Exactly. Man was created by the six angels and by Yaldabaoth, who gave him the divine essence. When the Spirit and Christ were taken up, a drop of light fell into the abyss beneath. This was Sophia Prunikos, who by contact with the waters gave birth to Yaldabaoth, the Demiurgus of the created heavens and earth and the ruler of the seventh heaven. From him came the six angels who rule the six heavens. He strove to hide the fact that there were any powers above him. Let me read that again. He strove to hide the fact that there were any powers above him. But when he boasted that he was the highest, his mother Sophia cried, "Thou liest, Yaldabaoth. The man creation of man was created by the six angels and by Yaldabaoth, who gave him the divine essence." This passage clearly tells us that it is from Yaldabaoth that humans had received their divine essence, which in turn gave them wisdom of both good and evil through the tree of life that is their DNA, blood. Instructed by Sophia, wisdom, man gave thanks to the Most High, which deeply offended the ruler of the seventh heaven. In order to degrade him by carnal desires, Yaldabaoth made Eve, from the Hebrew Hevia, for serpent, but Sophia saved man by means of the serpent, who induced Eve to raise herself and her husband by eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The serpent, worm, I wouldn't say worm. The serpent thus became the great benefactor of the human race. The following allegory of the story is from Irenaeus. Yaldabaoth, the child of the mother Sophia, generates a son of himself without the assistance of any mother, and his son a son in his turn, and he another, and so on until there are 6 sons generated, one from another. Now these immediately commenced to strive with their father for the mastery, and he in despair and rage gazed into the purgations of matter below, and through them begot another son, Ophiomorphos, the serpent formed, the spirit of all that is basest in matter. Then being puffed up with pride, he stretched himself over his highest sphere, and proclaimed aloud, I am Father and God, and there is none above me. On this his mother cried out, Lie not, Yaldabaoth, for the father of all, the first anthropos, man, is above thee, and so is I don't know what that says, Anthropides?
Anthropos.
The son of Anthropos.
It sounds like it is a Greek word. Being a Greek speaker, it's either anthropy, anthropes. It's one of those.
And Yaldabaoth.
But I don't know how it is written, the way it's written.
And Yaldabaoth, to prevent his sons attending to the voice, to prevent his sons from attending to Sophia's voice, proposed that they should fashion a man. So the 6 of them made a gigantic man who lay on the earth and writhed like a worm, the man of the first rounds and races. And they brought him to his father Yaldabaoth, who breathed into him the breath of life, and thus emptied himself of his creative power. And Sophia aided the design so that she might regain the light powers of Yaldabaoth. So in other words, she tricked Yaldabaoth into creating us so that she could steal that light back from Yaldabaoth through us.
Interesting.
Like, you will be my revenge.
Right. And that kind of paints a whole new perspective, because I think, somebody asked in the chat room earlier, is Aya the same as Sophia? And I don't think so. I think Aya is the spirit of the earth.
Yes.
But I think that Isis is Sophia.
Yeah, I think so too. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. So we'll get more into it in the second hour. This has been absolutely amazing. So don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen.
Imagine a world with no boundaries. Imagine a world with infinite possibilities. This is your world. A world of never-ending consciousness. Welcome, fellow star seeds, indigo and crystal children. The universe is yours, to forge as you wish. You must heal what our parents have destroyed. Into the darkness you will bear the light. Have no fear. We pass the torch to you. As you step beyond the veil.
All right, let's get back into it. I don't want to get too deep because it's a short segment that we have here, but John Teeter makes a really good point raised a really good question in the chat room. And he said, I know Chris Geo doesn't trust the blue avians, but I'm pretty sure they're the real deal, especially if you consider the fact that these beings have made it clear that they don't want to be worshipped. I differ with a few other people and other people that I consider to be like my brother, for example, Frank Castle. I know that he says that he's in contact with these blue avians, and I've never really spoken publicly about it because I typically go through what I've contacted and the Gnosis that I have. And I have not contacted any entities or beings claiming to be the blue avians. But what my intuition is telling me is that these are reptiles, reptilian, shapeshifted. And the giveaway, in my opinion, this is solely my opinion, is that they're claiming to be the ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses. And I am in contact with the ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses, the real energies. And they're not blue big birds. They're not. At least they haven't revealed themselves to me to be, but, maybe I think it's an archonic deception, but, again, I'm open-minded. I'm skeptical of everything, but at the same time open-minded. So I'm not passing judgment, but it just doesn't quite resonate with me, particularly, because of the circles that the Blue Avian information comes out of, which is Corey Goode and David Wilcock. I have one experience with David Wilcock personally, and I called him and he was super paranoid. Who are you? Why are you calling me? How'd you get my number? And I'm like, the station we're on gave me your number. I thought, you'd make a good guest for the show, et cetera, et cetera. And that was it. It was like, a really poor encounter like that. And then I heard him crying, and excuse my language, but I heard him crying like a little bitch
twice
on Carrie Cassidy's show, thinking that the Illuminati and Cabal is going to come kill him. And then I constantly hear this Ben Fulford bullshit, and this whole thing of, the Cabal is going to be arrested next week, and they're going to put George W. Bush and everybody on trial. It seems like they're just making it up as they go. Mm-hmm. Again, I could be completely wrong. I'm not closing myself off, to any possibilities, but in my particular experiences, this is what I'm getting. And I've watched a couple of Corey Goode and David Wilcock interviews, and David is leading Corey by the nose in every one of the interviews. Like, Corey doesn't even have the information. David Wilcock is feeding him the information, and then Corey's just kind of repeating what the questioning is. And so put all of this together, and it doesn't give me a good feeling about these particular entities. And I don't even know if they're real, to be frank. I can't say that they're real entities. I've never contacted them. I don't have any experience with them. So I guess it's out on the record now, and I'm open. If the Blue Avians want to contact me in my next experience, I will listen to what they have to say. We'll be right back.
If you could just buy into this whole I'm the devil thing, it'll save us both a lot of these questions. I can see we're going to get along famously. Cheers, darling.
Archangel, move back. Move back, you're blinding me.
Jesus. City. I'm the one you've been waiting for. You've been waiting for. Waiting for. Remember? When you were a little boy, you cried, make me God. God, make me a God.
Save yourself. Find love.
You are God. The Baptist knew it. Now it's time you admit it.
But I was just a child then.
You are his son, the only son of God. Join me. Together we'll rule the living and the dead. You'll give life and you'll take life. You'll sit in judgment and I'll sit next to. Imagine how strong we could be together.
Satan.
All right, let's get back into it, and let's talk about...
Unclean spirit! Shove it up your ass! In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ! It is he who commands you! He who flung you, prince of heaven, to the depths of hell. Fuck him! Begot! Fuck him, Garrus! From this creature of God! Begot! Damien! God! Defender of his look down in pity! You killed my mother! Your servant! You left her alone to die! Shut up!
I forgot that was still in there. That's a clip from the film Lucifer Deception.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a 5-year work in progress.
Yep,
That needs to come out.
it does.
It's just very, very powerful stuff, in my opinion, especially if you see the film. But let's get back into it about Yaldabaoth and the myth of Sophia.
So, Sophia aided the design of man so that she might regain the light powers of Yaldabaoth. Forthwith the man, having the divine spark, aspired to the heavenly man from whom it came. At this, Yaldabaoth grew jealous and generated Eve, Lilith, to deprive Adam of his light powers. And the 6 stellars, impassioned of her beauty, begot sons through her. Thereupon Sophia sent the serpent, intelligence, to make Adam and Eve transgress the precepts of Yaldabaoth, who in rage cast them down out of paradise into the world, together with the serpent, the 4th round and 4th race. At the same time, she deprived them of their light power, that it might not come under the curse as well. And the serpent reduced the world power under its sway, and generated 6 sons, who continually opposed the human race, through which their father, the serpent, was cast down. Now Adam and Eve in the beginning had pure spiritual bodies, which gradually became grosser and grosser. Their spirit too became languid, for they had naught but the breath of the lower world, which Yaldabaoth had breathed into them. In the end, however, Sophia gave them back their light power, and they awoke to the knowledge that they were naked. Yaldabaoth now forbade the man to eat of the tree of knowledge, which could enable him to understand the Gnostic mysteries and receive the graces from above. But man had to eventually be redeemed from the wrath of Yaldabaoth. Accordingly, Christ descended from above on the one perfect man Jesus, who had been prepared by Sophia. Yaldabaoth, seeing in Jesus Christ a power superior to himself, stirred up the Jews to crucify him. Of course, Christ could not suffer, and he withdrew himself from Jesus in whom he had worked on earth. Christ did not, however, forget Jesus utterly, but raised from the dead the spiritual body of Jesus, which remained on earth 18 months. At first, Jesus did not fully understand the truth, but Christ enlightened him, and he taught his disciples the true doctrine. So, in other words, it's not saying that Jesus was the Son of God. It was saying that the Christ consciousness descended into upon Jesus,
this person,
right?
Which I think happened.
Yes,
and then there was the sellout process, where Yaldabaoth or Yahweh or whatever was able to reclaim that being by tempting him.
Well, convincing him that he wasn't as powerful as this Yahweh character, because then that's the catch. There is that this Jesus character was actually superior in power to this Yaldabaoth, but Yaldabaoth was able to convince him otherwise, and thus making him sell out, thinking that, oh, well, I'm not as powerful as this guy right here, when really he was more powerful. Yaldabaoth's mother is the serpent Sophia, wisdom. The goddess Sophia, or wisdom, the lowest entity in the realm of perfection, creates Yaldabaoth in an unauthorized attempt to produce a likeness of herself. Yaldabaoth in turn creates the world we see today. In the Gnostic theology of Yaldabaoth, we find that his mother Sophia was the personification of the most sublime wisdom, who had the power to procreate but lacked the necessary knowledge. The Christian scripture would equate the goddess Sophia with the consort of Adam in the Garden of Eden, whose name is Eve. The word Eve is derived from the Hebrew hevia of Evia, which is interpreted as female serpent in Latin translations of the Bible. In earlier Greek versions, the word serpent would have simply read worm. This is where the church doctors came in at doctoring these ancient texts in order to hide the truth of man's creation.
However, we don't have to search far or in difficulty to see that this worm god, who is both the creator and destroyer, had given birth to several god-men over the course of human history. In the scripture it is said, "And from these worms God made angels." We find this passage more correctly rendered in the Hebrew Bible. Man that is a worm, Rima, and the son of man, which is a maggot, Tolea. But I am a worm and no man. How much more is man rottenness, and the son of man a worm? First he said man is rottenness, and afterwards the son of man a worm, because a worm springs from rottenness. Therefore man is rottenness, and the son of man a worm. The Lord said of himself, I am a worm and not a man. Psalm 21:7, 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason and Pontiff Albert Pike had written about how Christ put on the appearance of a human body in Morals and Dogma. The light could not unite with darkness, but it put on the appearance of a human body and took the name of Christ in the Messiah only to accommodate itself to the language of the Jews. He suffered in appearance only, the person of Jesus having disappeared. In the scripture we find the worm is the mother when it is said, I have said to the worm, thou art my mother. The worm shall feed sweetly on him. Sophia the serpent, or we know of as a worm, could not conceive a child, but she desperately wished for one. The Sethian Gnostics believed that Yaldabaoth was the consequence of her mental desire to have her own child. This is known in science as parthenogenesis and is a form of asexual reproduction in which growth and development of embryos that occur without fertilization. I believe this is the result of the Yaldabaoth or worm through the power of thought form and direction by its master, being the human or mother, is able to fertilize the egg of the mother without having sex. This explanation I give, and by the Sethians, would be similar to that of the meaning of the Aggregors, who I cover in what I discuss in the Science of Being Born a Virgin and the Secrets of the Watchers. An Aggregori is what is called in the occult a thought form, or collective group mind, that is created by a single magician or a group. These thought forms are based on actually creating a real physical chemical energy being with the power of thoughts, magical elements, and action in which a psychic entity is made from the thoughts of the magician or a group of people. These egregories then form symbiotic relationships with their creators in which they will actually perform tasks and work for them much like an employee would for a corporation or a slave for his master. Because Sophia could not have a child, this mental fire in the form of desire would spark a spontaneous creation or spark being that of a worm/sperm in the form of Yaldabaoth, who then becomes the, quote, yellow or golden boy of hosts, the chief speaker or Hermes of his worm people, in which he is given the authority of the god of this world to be his official scribe as Toth or Seth. Yaldabaoth's mother was a serpent or worm, which makes him one as well. However, Sophia became horrified at the sight of her creation, which was an ugly, imperfect creature with the body of a serpent, worm, a body of a worm, the face of a lion, and eyes of fire. According to Saint Irenaeus, his mother Sophia had to rebuke by a reminder that above him were the Father of all, the first man, and the man, the Son of Man. She cast him away from her radiance, so that no one among the immortal ones might see him. She joined a luminous cloud with him and placed a throne in the middle of the cloud. Out of shame and disgust, Sophia cast Yaldabaoth out of her pleroma and hid him in a thick cloud. By hiding him behind a cloud, the other eons would not be able to see him. Sophia would be the daughter of on the so below of the planet of the as above Venus in the form of sulfur or soul fire. Madame Blavatsky had written in Isis Unveiled, in this plurality of heavens the Christians believed from the first, for we find Paul teaching of their existence, and speaking of a man caught up to the third heaven. From these 7 angels Yaldabaoth shut up all that was above him, lest they should know of anything superior to himself. They then created, in other words, he created this matrix so that we would think that he was the only God.
Right.
And
keeping us disconnected completely from everything else, from source, from the higher and lower dimensions, etc., etc.
Exactly. They then created man in the image of their father, but prone and crawling on the earth like a worm. But the heavenly mother, Prunikos, Sophia Prunikos, wishing to deprive Yaldabaoth of the power with which she had unwittingly endowed him, infused into man a celestial spark, the spirit. Immediately man rose upon his feet, soared in mind beyond the limits of the seven spheres, and glorified the Supreme Father, him that is above Ildabaoth. Hence the latter, full of jealousy, cast down his eyes upon the lowest stratum of matter, and begot a potency in the form of a serpent, whom they, Ophites, call his son. Eve, obeying him as the Son of God, was persuaded to eat of the tree of knowledge. It is a self-evident fact that the serpent of the Genesis, who appears suddenly and without any preliminary introduction, must have been the antitype of the Persian Arkdevs, whose head is Ashmog, the two-footed serpent of lies. If the serpent had been deprived of his limbs before he had tempted woman unto sin, why should God specify as a punishment that he should go upon his belly? Nobody supposes that he walked upon the extremity of his tail. The meaning of Ildabaoth. The Hebrew name Ildabaoth is composed of three names, being Yah or Yah, Da, and Baoth. The meaning of Yah or Yah, Jah, is the name of the Lord God and or Jupiter. These names often appear in Scripture for the priest names of the true God, such as Elijah, Adonai, and even Saint John, Eon, or Iona. The meaning of the word Baoth, Sevaot or Sabaoth, is hosts or armies. Sevaot or Sabaoth may be found in 1 Samuel 17:45, where it is interpreted as denoting, quote, the God of the armies of Israel, Jehovah God of all flesh, Jehovah God of Sabaoth, the God of Israel, Adonai Jehovah Sabaoth, the living God's Jehovah Sabaoth, our God, and the great El, the mighty Jehovah Sabaoth. Also, Yahweh, YHWH, Elohe Sabaoth, Yahweh God of hosts, Elohe Sabaoth, God of hosts, Adonai, Yahweh Sabaoth, Lord Yahweh of hosts, and most frequently, Yahweh Sabaoth, Yahweh of hosts. The Gnostic Yad Hammadi library states that Sabaoth is the son of Yaldabaoth. The meaning of the Hebrew Yaldabaoth may also be found today in the English word yellow or yellow boy. The word yellow in Hebrew is Yaldib and signifies a being of a bright glaring color as gold, and yellow boy is derived from the Hebrew Yeldib boy, which is where we get Yaldabaoth. Hence, Yaldabaoth is who we can call the firstborn Gnostic who rebels against God, fallen angel, and is referred to as the yellow or golden boy of hosts, and where we get the expression in the hymn, Holy, 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 Lord God of Sabaoth, or rather Zebaoth, which signifies hosts. We find Yahweh Sabaoth or Jehovah Sabaoth in the Septuagint, which means the God of hosts or Jupiter, the Lord of hosts. Sir Godfrey Higgins had written in Anacalypsis an attempt to draw aside the veil of the Saitic Isis, Volume 1. Here we find the seat of God with its 7 earths, emblematical of the sun and 7 planets, and the Hindu Sabha called congregation, meaning the same as Sabaoth, Lord God of Sabaoth, Lord God of the heavenly host, the starry host. We always end with the sun and heavenly host. And here is also Ild Avrata, Holy Avrata, or Ararat. The Sabah is what we call in the Bible Sebaoth, but in the Hebrew it is the same as the Sanskrit. I have no idea what this says. Toljv Zabah, and generally means Lord of the planetary bodies. O Ataf in Zabah Simim, though perhaps the stars may sometimes be included by uninitiated persons. Here is the origin of the Sabians, which has been much sought for. Yaldabaoth's rest day. As mentioned above, Yaldabaoth created humans and thought himself to be God. In doing so, he became the chief archon of all people and powers in the world in which they are, but his servants who work as slaves, in creating his kingdom. Yaldabaoth does this in stealth inside the human body, where he cannot be seen, along with his fellow demons who control the carbon matter of their hosts by taking over their central nervous systems. Think a computer virus, in which the archons became their lord and masters. This is why Manly P. Hall had said humans have no free will at this time. Their free will has been hijacked, and they must become servants to their master Yaldabaoth, who commands they build the world that we see today. Hence, he is the creator and, in the end, the destroyer. I think that's pretty powerful stuff right there. They they take over the central nervous systems like a computer virus, and the archons become their lords and masters.
Wow. And this is exactly what I was talking about on how this archonic energy wraps its tentacles around the bodies of people and the minds of people. And that's why people that are infected with this Yahweh virus, it's so difficult to explain this to them, because it has such a grip on them. And the Yahweh virus, in my opinion, is one of the only external energies that can actually move a player around in this artificial construct that we live in. We always hear about demonic possession, but I don't think that that's the case. I've seen demons in the ayahuasca realm. I've combated demons. I've removed demons. They're weak little things. They're not anything to be afraid of. I mean, there's something to be aware of, because when you're not aware of them, that's how they feed upon your energy, and that's how they put thoughts in your mind and things like that. It's only through not being aware of them that they get their power. But this Yahweh energy, on the other hand, it can infect you and start moving you around like demonic possession.
And so Manly P. Hall, one of the most outspoken Freemasons that ever walked the earth, said, humans have no free will at this time. Their free will has been hijacked, and they must become servants to their master Yaldabaoth, who commands that they build the world that we see today. That is very powerful. Just like we all need a day off to rest from our labors, so do the servants of Yaldabaoth, who I already mentioned is all of modern humanity, and especially that of the Jews who worship Yaldabaoth as God, when in reality he is the false God, for none is higher than Jupiter and the father of all mankind. See, he's making a distinction between Yahweh Jehovah and this Yaldabaoth when they're one and the same. I think he's making the distinction between Yahweh, Jehovah, and Yaldabaoth, when I think they're one and the same.
I think they are too.
Yeah.
That's what my gut is telling me, and that it's different aspects of the same consciousness.
Right. Sabbath, as the verb Shabbath, is first mentioned in the Genesis creation narrative, where the seventh day is set aside as a day of rest and made holy by God. Observation and remembrance of Sabbath is one of the 10 Commandments. This day of rest for the servants of the false god of Yaldabaoth, that we know of as the worm who created man and thought he was God, is called the Sabbath, and is on Saturday for Saturn's day. Jewish Shabbat, Shabbath, Shabbos, Shobos, etc., is a weekly day of rest observed from sundown on Friday until the appearance of 3 stars in the sky on Saturday night. Hence, one of the archonic fallen angels, son of God Yaldabaoth, is known as Sebaot or Sabaoth or Seboath, and their day of worship is on the Sabbath. The day of rest for the true God is the 7th day, beginning that of the Sunday, dedicated to the true God Yahweh, Jehovah of light, who is Jupiter. No, that it was changed to Sunday because of Mithra.
Yeah.
Mithra worship.
Yeah, Constantine merged that over to the Sunday.
Right, exactly. In ancient literature and with all the ancient philosophers, Jupiter is the most high sovereign God and Lord of the universe, who is often called esoterically the sun, being that of the second sun, whose true day of Sabbath is Sunday. The Gnostic Jews, or Crete and Greece, along with Gentiles of other kingdoms, eventually became Christians under the unified banner of the global universal Catholic Church, with their Jewish crucified Savior Jesus Christ as the cornerstone of their faith. The Roman Emperor Constantine, a sun worshipper, professed his conversion to Christianity, although his subsequent actions suggest that the conversion was more of a political move than a genuine change of heart.
I agree with that, 100%.
Yeah. Constantine proclaimed himself Bishop of the Catholic Church and then enacted the first civil law regarding Sunday observance in AD 321. The Catholic state, the Church substituted Sunday for Saturday by the plenitude of that divine power which Jesus Christ bestowed upon her. That's a little bit nauseating. Yaldabaoth's covenant with Israel. Yaldabaoth then chose Abraham and made a covenant with him. The word Abraham is derived from the Hebrew word Ham, which is identical with the old Egyptian name of their country, being that of Kem, being properly written Khm, Kam, or Kem. The meaning of Ham is hot or burnt, and was written by the Greco-Egyptians as Ammon and later Jupiter Ammon.
I don't resonate
I
with
don't
that.
resonate with that either.
To my understanding, ancient Egypt was tropical.
Yeah, it was. Oh, yeah, it was totally tropical up until just about 10,000 years ago.
Right.
Right.
So it doesn't resonate with me, but that's what's written here in the article.
Yeah, this is just what's written in the article. So I'm trying to get to a part that I kind of will understand a little better.
We can go through the whole thing.
All right. Yaldabaoth. Oh, the word Abraham is derived. Okay. To the ancient Greeks, Jupiter is the only real god that sits behind the veil of Isis. Explained in the book Anacalypsis, an attempt to draw aside the veil of the Saitic Isis by Godfrey Higgins. Ham was nothing but a Greek corruption of a very celebrated Indian word, formed of the three letters A-U-M. Is pronounced like a drawling amen. Amen. And there must be a close connection between the of India, the Amun-Ra and Amun-Khneph of Egypt, and the Jupiter Ammon of Greece. Yaldabaoth is Samael. It was from the serpent that man and woman was created, but was also the adversary named Samael. 33rd degree Freemason and author Manly P. Hall had written, in the 3rd chapter of Genesis, is the adversary is Samael, the serpent, and like Mephistopheles, it is a spirit of negation, part of the power that still works for good while ever scheming ill. In the Old Testament, Samael or Semiel or Semil is an important archangel in Talmudic and post-Talmudic lore, a figure who is accuser, seducer, and destroyer, and has been regarded as both good and evil. It is said that he was the guardian angel of Esau and a patron of the Roman Empire. The meaning of the name Samael, Sam, in Hebrew is sun-child, bright sun, and the name El or El signifies God. The Gnostic conclusion.
Everything that is, was, and will be, eternally is, even the countless forms which are finite and perishable only in their objective, and not in their ideal form, the form which manifests itself, beyond the veil.
All right, we will be speaking with Jimmy Jean in the 3rd hour of the broadcast. So in this next segment, I was thinking maybe we can kick around a couple of ideas about everything that we just talked about, too. I haven't even been checking the call board. If anybody wants to call in, 213-233-3998, and I'll try to keep an eye on the call board as well to see if anybody's calling in.
Interestingly enough, that's the end of that article, but I just search for Yaldabaoth just out of the blue, and and Wiktionary says that in Gnosticism it's the name of the Demiurge or false god created when Sophia, one of the lesser eons, tried to emanate without her counterpart, who is Christ.
Right, I've heard that story before. That she tried to create
without her twin flame.
Yeah,
essentially, and that kind of goes to show that when it comes to divine creation, you really do need that counterpart when it comes to divine creation. And I know that there are many, many things that I would not have been able to accomplish had it not been for having Chris with me. Just even his energy helps me to be able to complete things.
Here's some awesome quotes by Madame Blavatsky.
Yeah, go ahead.
Down at the bottom. I'd rather you read them. I feel like you should be the one to deliver this kind of information.
Okay. These astral gods, whose chief with the Gnostics was Yaldabaoth, from Ilda, child, and Baoth, the egg, the son of Sophia Achamoth, the daughter of Sophia, wisdom, whose region is the Pleroma, where were his Yaldabaoth's sons. He produces from himself these 6 stellar spirits, Jehovah, Sebaoth, Adonai, Eloi, Osreos, Astapheos, and it is they who are the second or inferior Hebdomad. As to the third, it is composed of the 7 primeval men, the shadows of the lunar gods, projected by the first Hebdomad. In this, the Gnostics did not, as seen, differ much from the esoteric doctrine, except that they veiled it. As to the charge made by Irenaeus, who is evidently ignorant of the true tenets of the heretics, with regard to man being created on the 6th day, and man being created on the 8th, this relates to the mysteries of the inner man. It will become comprehensible to the reader only after he has read Book 2 and understood well the anthropogenesis of the esoteric doctrine. Ildebaoth is a copy of Manu. The latter boasts, O best of twice-born men, know that I, Manu, am he, the creator of all this world, whom that male Viraj spontaneously produced. He first creates the 10 lords of being, the Prajapatis, who, as verse 36 says, produce 7 other Manus, the ordinances of Manu. Ildebaoth does likewise. I am Father and God, and there is no one above me, he exclaims, for which his mother coolly puts him down by saying, Do not lie, Ildebaoth, for the father of all, the first man, Anthropos, is above thee, and so is Anthropos, the son of Anthropos. Irenaeus, Book 1, Chapter 30, verse 6. This is a good proof that there were 3 logoi besides the 7 born of the first, one of these being the solar logos. And again, who was that Anthropos himself, so much higher than Ildebaoth? The Gnostic records alone can solve this riddle. In Pistis Sophia, the 4-voweled name Iov is in each case, that's IEOV, is in each case accompanied by the epithet of the primal or first man. This shows again that the Gnosis was but an echo of our archaic doctrine. The names answering to Parabram, to Brahm, and Manu, the first thinking man, are composed of 1-voweled, 3-voweled, and 7-voweled sounds. Marcus, whose philosophy was certainly more Pythagorean than anything else, speaks of a revelation to him of the 7 heavens, sounding each one vowel as they pronounce the 7 names of the 7 angelic hierarchies. First, and that's F-U-R-S-T, quote, the very ancient name of God, Yahweh, written in the Greek Io, appears apart from its derivation to have been an old mystic name of the supreme deity of the Shemites. Hence, it was told to Moses when initiated at Horeb, the cave under the direction of Jethro, the Kenite or Canaanite priest of Midian. In an old religion of the Chaldeans, whose remains are to be found amongst the Neoplatonists, the highest divinity enthroned above the 7 heavens, representing the spiritual light principle, Nous, and also conceived as Demiurgus, was called Io, who was like the Hebrew Yahweh, mysterious and unmentionable, and whose name was communicated to the initiated. The Phoenicians had a supreme god whose name was trilateral and secret, and he was Io. From the Theosophical Review, Volume 6, Ildebaoth or Eldebaoth is identical with the Fetihil of the Codex Nazareus. I think we've already read this. If we regard the Sophia above, Lucifer, as the Akza, and the Sophia below, Achamoth, as its lower or material planes, we shall be able to understand why Ildebaoth, the material creator, was identified with Jehovah and Saturn, and so follow out the following category from Irenaeus. Ildebaoth, the child of the mother Sophia, generates a son of himself without the assistance of any mother, and his son a son in his turn, and he another, and so on until there are 6 sons generated, one from another. I've already talked about this. Yeah, everything else I've already read. So, at the same time, she deprived them of their light power, that it might not come under the curse as well. And the serpent reduced the world powers under its sway and generated 6 sons, who continually opposed the human race, through which their father was cast down. Now, Adam and Eve in the beginning had pure spiritual bodies, which gradually became grosser and grosser. Their spirit, too, became languid, for they had not but the breath of the lower world, which Ildebaoth had breathed into them. In the end, however, Sophia gave them back their light power, and they awoke to the knowledge that they were naked. Now, what that means to me is that we are spiritual beings that are trapped in the material world, and having this material 3D experience kind of diminishes our ability to see that we are divine. And we can't see our own divinity because we're so covered in the crap of being in 3D, being in this 3D material world. It really diminishes our light. But through the Gnosis, we are able to get that light power back. And I think this is a great story. It's a great story. It's a great piece of Gnostic wisdom that I really enjoy. I didn't agree with all of it, of course, but I think that this guy has some really good ideas.
I think so too.
And Blavatsky was spot on with a lot of things.
She was amazing. And again, there were some things that I don't agree with that she said, but there's a lot of things that really do resonate. And I feel a big connection to her energy. And, that's one of the other things that, like the truth movement, they try to keep you away from. They try to keep you away from Blavatsky's work. They try to keep you away from these esoteric gnoses and understandings and so on and so forth. When you break all of that and start looking into it, you're like, oh, wait a minute. This is really resonating information for a higher consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And somebody was saying in the chat, my higher self does stress the importance of filling my chakras with Christ energy and combining it with earth energy. We can't live in the clouds all the time, even though when me and Chris were drinking ayahuasca on the regular, I mean, every 3 days at one point for several weeks at a time. Yes, we were at a very, very high frequency, but we weren't grounding ourselves enough. And then as a result, we had kind of a long dark night of the soul happen because we weren't grounding ourselves at the same time that we were flying through the clouds. And you have to have both, and you have to have both in balance, or the pendulum's just going to swing the other direction, and you're going to hit the ground hard, and it's going to be a hard recovery from that, so to speak. But if you stay grounded, and at the same time, like with one foot on the ground, the other foot, in the sky, then you can be both and be balanced. And that's why Sophia screwed up, because she didn't have the balance of the masculine and feminine. All she had was the feminine. And so she created something and then tried to abort it because she realized, oh, I screwed up. I'm not supposed to create by myself. There's supposed to be that balance of masculine and feminine when it comes to creation. And I deprived this being of that. And as a result, he's a monster.
Very interesting. This is an old tale that has been pretty much the foundation and the root of all of mankind from the beginning to the end. It's been an energy that we've had to fight off, and it seems to have gotten a grip in a real stronghold over the human consciousness because of Constantine. But if you look at Constantine's actions, for example, it was all about nation building. It was all about empire building. It was about conquering and trying to take over the world.
Domination.
Right. And the energy resonates perfectly with this Yahweh, I am the emperor of the world, I'm the one true God, etc., etc. And, but I mean, you can even take it back to Egypt, though. I think the fall of Egypt, if you really look at it, in my opinion, really took place when they got rid of the pantheon and instituted monotheism.
Yeah.
Because monotheism is the ego, it's the I am, and it disconnects you from all other parts of your consciousness, which are like compassion and love and empathy and warrior and the mother, the father, et cetera, and we have all these different elements in our consciousness. And so looking at the Egyptian pantheon, for example, you can even see them as different aspects of our own consciousness. And if that's the case, they've kept us completely disconnected with monotheism by focusing on one thing, one aspect of our consciousness, which is the ego. So even if you want to take all of this as metaphoric, it's still focusing the consciousness on just the ego.
Right, exactly. Because when you're focused just on the ego, then the long term doesn't really matter. What really matters at that point in time is that your ego doesn't get bruised. And that, somebody dissed me, somebody, you know, did something against me that hurt my feelings or made me feel bad. So I'm going to react, not thinking about the future, not thinking about what's going to happen to this relationship if I do react poorly to this. And the ego is all about me, mine, my property, my family, my wife, my kids, all of that. And I think it's amazing, though, how Sophia, she put the divine spark inside of us to take the light power away from him. You know, we're her way of kind of evening the score, I guess you could say, or evening things out and bringing balance to this third dimension that she created for him. You know, she created this as kind of a playpen so that his badness couldn't spread to other parts.
Right. And we're all trapped in here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Hadi Bov stuff is something very interesting. It's something we talked about a couple of years back, but it was supposedly this Russian scientist, and he was disclosing about the lunar wave and how the moon actually creates these program changes within the matrix. And some of the stories that he was saying kind of, you know, put a new perspective on this. And again, I don't know how much I resonate with this, but it all goes back to the exact same story of an artificial construct created by this being for one purpose or another. And the part of the story that I think we can theorize on or think about, I mean, maybe that's just a good way to put it, just, you know, add this to the equation and see if it fits, is the idea that this construct was created as a way to capture souls, and the souls are inside of this construct. At one point, we lived for 1,000 years, but what was happening is people were figuring out how to ascend out of this construct within that 1,000-year period. And so over the course of time, our organic containers, which trap our soul essence within the body, within this construct, they began making them expire less and less and less and less and less. And now they expire at 60 years old if we're lucky, 70 years old if we're lucky. I mean, it used to be 80, but if you look at the average rate of how people are dying, it's getting less and less and less.
Now it's 68,
right,
65.
And some of the theories is that the people like Jesus Christ, for example, came to show us how we can achieve that Christ consciousness in such a short period of time to escape this matrix. But again, we have the recurring theme of matrix. And then there's the other side of it too. Like maybe it's not a prison, maybe it's a university. And that's why we call it a universe, a university. We're here to learn. And part of graduating from this university is the ability to see the construct for what it is.
Right.
So I see a lot of people who are like, for example, anti-flat earth. And it's fine. I mean, I'm like, I sit back and I think to myself, the really hardcore anti-flat earth people, they're just like in second grade or third grade in the construct. Like maybe this lifetime they'll ascend a little bit higher, or perhaps they won't ascend in this lifetime, and it'll take more lifetimes in order to do that. But, you know, they not being able to see the construct for the artificialness that it is, I think it shows it shows where the person is on the path. And people were ridiculing me. Hey, why are you into this flat earth thing? Why are you into this flat earth thing? And it's because it resonated. Like it resonated as an artificial construct. And I think that's ultimately where I was going. I just didn't realize it at the time. But when I heard it, I said, oh, wow, yeah, no, this makes perfect sense. And then taking it a step further. So I think it all ties in together. Everything that we've talked about, everything that we've learned, the entire journey, all ties together to come to that point to where we're like, okay, now we recognize everything in the construct. Let's move on to bigger and better things.